It's CeFi masquerading as DeFi, and ultimately it's the middlemen that are really they have no place in true crypto. And if you want to regulate them, yeah, regulate the hell out of them. And if you do that and start using that method, that'll make a significant difference in terms of how crypto gets adopted.
What is going on, people? It's Matt from Liquid Loans, and in this video, I'm joined by our CEO, CC, for an update on all the developments that are taking place behind the scenes. So, with no further ado, let's go. Hey, CC, great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to jump on with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. It's been a little while, so really great to be back on the channel having a chat and giving the community a bit of an update in terms of where things are at.
Yeah, definitely been a while since we last saw you, but I know developments are always happening behind the scenes. So, maybe you can bring us up to speed on what's been going on.
Yeah, look, a lot of the work that's been done, we all know that we're sort of in a bear market, and we just have to put up with that. But there is an upside to that, and that is that we just get on with the development. And the team have been working really hard. There's a number of things that we've been doing. The next release will actually be quite a significant release. So we'll re-release contracts. That will have an impact. And the impact that that will have is that whilst the existing version will still remain and still be usable, if you have locked up your pulse with the first version, to be able to use the subsequent version, you'll have to effectively close your vaults on the first version and then move over to V2. V2 will enable you to basically restake your tokens and start using the system as it's designed. Some of the features that you'll notice is the analytics page is probably the biggest change that we're making, and that's primarily just to provide feedback on the overall protocol performance. What's been really fantastic for us is that we're probably not that well known, but I think we have something like 830 odd vaults currently open on the system, which is really fantastic from our perspective, because it basically means that we have more vaults open than Liquidity does on the current system they're running on Ethereum. So it's actually it's very promising for us that we're getting such a good take up rate. We're expecting that to obviously will increase in time, but it's been a really refreshing set of numbers that we're seeing. But also, I think it's a testament to the community. One of the things that Matt, is that we actually have a ticketing system that we're using to enable people in the community to provide us with some feedback. And the types of feedback have included, look, there's a few quirky things that we've picked up, some small bugs that we've picked up. The community's helped and identified some of those, so we've been able to remedy that. But there's a hell of a lot of enhancement requests that we've been able to work through and incorporate into this next release. So really, thank you so much to the community for providing that feedback. Obviously, it's really important for us that the community gets behind us and is able to test what we're developing and provide that sort of feedback so we can continue to enhance the DApp itself.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The ticketing system has been such a success, and it's really helped the community give us their feedback so we can make the protocol even better than we thought.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are also asking about the validator situation with Pulse Chain and the Liquid Loans validator. What's the next step there?
Yeah, well, look, the main issue for us with the validator is given the shift to Ethereum 2.0, the consensus mechanism changing. We just felt that it was appropriate to decommission the existing validator. We have to obviously revisit that once V3 comes out. We'll be able to then reassess our position re the validator. We certainly want to support the network. A couple of things that I did want to call out. I actually wanted to call out a couple of the Pulse Chain developers, and that is that they've been quite helpful in providing support to us. One of the things that we need from an analytics page perspective is you need to be able to pull historical data. And, even though we'll be aggregating results, we need to sort of draw on a significant amount of data to be able to do that. The only way that you can really do that is through something called an archive node. And whilst we were thinking about spinning one up, and I think we may consider that in the future, and spinning up an archive node can take quite some time because you're effectively duplicating all of the transactions that exist on chain. And so that takes a while to effectively build and make sure that you have a full set of the data that exists. Thankfully, the Pulse Chain devs actually have an archive node that we've been able to use for some of our testing, which has been a godsend. So thank you so much for that help, guys. I really appreciate it. And ultimately, I think my expectation is that, in the broader community, I'm expecting that there will be folk that potentially create archive nodes that provide a node for a service type arrangement. And the reason for that is, whilst the analytics information is quite crucial in terms of protocol performance, it doesn't really impact the protocol itself. It's more a reporting mechanism. And, this is where people sort of get I think they're a little bit misguided in the sense that people assume that it's just a cut and paste. So whenever you're developing, it's just cut and paste. It's really easy. Just take the code, redeploy. But the problem is,
Definitely.
there's all these dependencies, right? So one of the dependencies is, my goodness, if we didn't have an archive node, we'd have to build the archive node to be able to pull the data. There's other tools, for example, there's protocols such as GraphQL that enables you to run queries, generate the aggregations of that information. So having access to that, effectively a lot of that infrastructure didn't exist. So we're having to recreate it. And there's some other things, and I won't go into all the gory detail, but it's not a simple case of, I just copy this and it's just going to run successfully somewhere else.
Yeah.
It always sounds weird when people say that. And I think probably the classic example of that would be, and that the community is aware that we're sort of working with Teller on the Oracle service. We are intending to have an Oracle service that's running on Pulse Chain, but the reality is currently none exists. Although we actually have the Teller Oracle up and running. We're still testing and doing some tests with that. So there'll be more news to come on that front. But that's probably one of the last areas that we need to tackle from an infrastructure perspective. But you can imagine the communities at the moment, we're all sort of waiting with bated breath as to when Pulse Chain V3 is going to launch. And I'm sure I've missed a few of Richard's streams of late. Just we've been too busy on other stuff. But I got an inkling that he made some comments where he admitted that he'd wait for the market to bottom out. And I think I'd hate to say it, but I called Richard calling that he would end up deploying at the bottom of the market. So I'm going to call that one. How's that? So I've got one up on Richard for once, and I think from that point of view, I think we kind of suspected it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And the community's been quite patient. I think there have been a little bit of negativity around that by some, but I actually think look, patience will reward those that are patient, and I think my expectation is that we'll all be very happy once Pulse Chain launches.
Yeah, I think as you get older, I think we all see that we want stuff, overnight. We all want Amazing Body, or we all want Riches overnight, or Pulse Chain to launch after 1 week after the sacrifice phase. But I think patience is a virtue, and it's going to pay dividends for everyone involved.
Well, I must be very bloody virtuous then, mate, because I'm a little bit further down the runway than you are. So
just a couple of years. That's all.
Yeah. But it's anyway. But I think the reality is delayed gratification applies at all levels, and I think this is one example where once the devs have got everything right and Richard's comfortable, Pulse will launch. It'll make a lot of sense, and I can only see good things in the future.
Absolutely. Last time you were on, we didn't have a new exciting addition, which has been announced in the last month or two. I'd like to get your thoughts on that and what you think about our new addition and how he's doing.
Yeah, look, I think everyone's, well, I wouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people are very familiar with Walrus. So he's a fantastic guy. So he's a great addition to the team. I really regard Walrus as quite a thought leader in our space, and he has a very unique perspective on some of the things that we're all dealing with. His value set's very aligned with ours. It was a really easy transition for him to join the team, and I'm so pleased that he's decided to join. And look, you would have noticed he's been working pretty hard at getting some Twitter spaces up for us just to cover off on some of the technical topics. Obviously, I have a perspective. Dave has a perspective. I'm happy to share my views. I think what you'll find with Walrus is he'll go into a lot more deeper dive on some of those things with the community, and he adds enormous value in terms of constantly focusing on educating and inspiring. And I think, Matt, I wanted to call you out on this as well because, for people that are familiar with the channel, I'd argue everyone has seen the progression, and mate, the content that you're producing now, I personally believe is second to none. And yes, I'm a little bit biased, but honestly, mate, the quality of the content that you're producing, sharp, insightful, on point, it's exactly what the community wants. And I think, the fact that we're focusing on constantly educating and inspiring, mate, it's a credit to you, and I really commend the work that you're doing with the channel. And I actually feel that there'll be opportunities for Walrus to actually help and effectively provide this point of view, and actually augment the work that you're doing. So thank you so much, Matt.
Fantastic. No, thanks, CC. I appreciate that. But it's a team effort, and we're all working to educate and inspire and just help the DeFi Pulse Chain community and what's not. And last but not least, before I let you go, there's been a lot of buzz about regulations, CBDCs, and all that stuff. I'd love to get your thoughts on it and how the landscape is looking with you and how that's going to affect DeFi as a whole.
Without sort of looking at the negative aspects of that, I think it's kind of understandable why governments are looking at CBDCs. My view is this is not about reducing costs of transaction. This is purely about control. And this is my perspective on this is it's about control. The concerns I have with a lot of the CBDC side of things is that primarily people need to get used to the fact that, hey, part of the reason that we end up going to fiat and we have things like off ramps and exchanges is mostly because people feel the need that the only way that you can actually extract value from the crypto in general is to actually exit it into traditional fiat. And there's an argument that says, what we should be looking at is focusing on perhaps the retail end of the market. And what I mean by that is all the merchants, right? So you go to a retail shop. The last thing the retailer wants to do is to say, hey, I'm going to accept Bitcoin, or I'm going to accept Hex, or I'm going to accept any other very volatile asset because of that very reason. It's too bloody volatile. So there's a trepidation to actually take that on board. But what we should be doing is we should be using, and I call them DOCs, right? So it's decentralized, over-collateralized stablecoins. That's what Liquid Loans is going to bring to Pulse Chain, and we'll have access to that type of stablecoin. Now imagine if, and who knows in the future that this may transpire, but imagine if we end up with merchants saying, hey, you know what? We're happy to accept USDL as a payment method. Fantastic. Guess what? We never have to exit Pulse Chain. We don't have to go to fiat. People can start using that directly. So imagine merchants being able to do that. Now, then the question would be, well, why would a merchant want to do that? Well, if you're a merchant, you're also subjected to significant transaction cost every time someone wants to purchase something. So merchant fees are all over the place. And the reality is, if we can actually reduce that friction or reduce and remove that cost, wouldn't it be a fantastic place that if we could go to, for example, any merchant and say, here's our Liquid Loans debit card, it's loaded up with USDL, let's use that as a payment method. And the merchant's quite happy to accept that. And because we know that the transaction speed is going to be phenomenal, we know that that's going to be far more acceptable than, hey, let's go and pay for our coffee with Bitcoin, when the reality is, I think we all know that the transaction speed isn't there. It's not as well accepted. There's a lot of the maxis would argue that says, oh, no, we need Bitcoin for that. The argument is we don't. What we need is to start using the over-collateralized stable coins. And if you do that and start using that method, that'll make a significant difference in terms of how crypto gets adopted. And we can start doing away with the whole need of exiting out to fiat. And if you think about all of the recent dramas that we've all heard about, and I won't go into all that gory detail, but ultimately it's CeFi. It's CeFi. It's not DeFi. And it's CeFi masquerading as DeFi. And ultimately, it's the middlemen that are really, they have no place in true crypto. And if you want to regulate them, regulate the hell out of them. I feel that that is a space that really a lot of the injury that's been cast upon people at the moment is purely because people misbehaving and effectively people have handed over their keys. These middlemen have decided to take significant risks with your money
Mm.
without your knowledge, and ultimately you carry all that risk. That's not what DeFi is about. It's certainly not what crypto was intended for. And so I totally agree with Richard's point of view on that, is that we don't want that in this space. And I'd rather see all of those, if you want to regulate them, yeah, go ahead and regulate.
Mm.
The sad part is that, we'll get caught up with some of that rubbish. And so we need to be very clear on that. And my view on DeFi, if you want to regulate DeFi, maybe the compliance aspect of that is that you need to have verifiable audits. If you've got verifiable audits, you go a long way to sort of discount any potential risks that exists in a smart contract risk, for example. It's not the only risk we need to concern ourselves with. There's still potential for people doing the wrong thing, such as hypothecating loans. We kind of know that that's not a good thing. And if you don't know what the hell hypothecating loans is, it's basically taking a loan and then adding another loan and then adding another loan. And effectively what it does is you're constantly doing that to the point where the underlying collateral is diluted and it creates a significant risk. And so I think if we can avoid that sort of behavior, that'll help a lot. But ultimately, I think DeFi, it's the intent is it once you have good contracts that are audited and verifiable, what is it that you really want to regulate? It's ultimately a lot of noise that we're hearing in the market has got nothing to do with DeFi. Anyway, you asked for a comment. That's my short version.
Listen, always good to get your thoughts on this. And I appreciate you coming on the channel, CC. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on with me today. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Matt, thank you very much and keep up the good work, mate. Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed that update video with CC. Drop it in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. And if you like content like this, do hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you're notified every time we drop new videos on the channel. You can also tap the like button and share the video with someone who you think it may benefit. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.